All right, hey guys, welcome to Through the Bible, verse by verse, a plain and simple study of the entire Bible, book by book, chapter by chapter, and verse by verse. We're starting in a new book, Second Kings, and we are going to go through. That's it, Second Kings. We finish. Excuse me. We finish Second Samuel last time, so I'm sorry, I misspoke. I meant to say First Kings. First Kings. Um, and this is a continuation of the narrative, the Israel narrative. Now, you might go, well, what's the purpose of this? Well, it tells the story of Israel, God's dealings with Israel. Um, and the main plot is the bloodline of Jesus. That's the main story. The main thing is the bloodline of Jesus. Um, and so that's what um, from Genesis, and just a quick overview of the Old Testament or the structure of the Bible. Um, I seem to be getting a feed here. Let's see if I'm getting something. But the main structure or overview of the Bible is um, uh, all right, I'm going to come out of this because I'm not getting what I am looking at here. All right, I'm going to come out of this because I'm getting one of it, but I'm not getting the other. So why aren't I picking up on one feed? All right, here we go. Okay. Very interesting here. This was, okay, this is not coming up here. All right. Looks like it's coming up now. Okay. First Kings 1. All right. All right. Okay, it seems like it's coming up now. Okay. So, as I said, a quick overview of the Old Testament, or even the biblical structure when you're reading the Bible. And as we've been going through, we actually started this study in the New Testament a couple of years ago in the New Testament. So we kind of go around circle again. So going book by book, chapter by chapter, verse by verse. So then we started in the Old Testament, and then we said, breaking down the Old Testament, you have really three sections, and I'm going to say two, however, three sections. So you got the first section, which you can say the historical background. So from Genesis to Esther is a historical narrative up until the Babylonian exile, and just maybe 100 years after the Babylonian exile. And then you go into what is called the Dark Ages. So about a period about 500 years until we get to the New Testament, which would be Matthew, Mark, and Luke. So we're still in the historical narrative, or the historical section. Start with the first 5 books of the Old Testament. Moses telling from creation until the 40 years, his 40 years of wandering of Israel, to his actually last day on earth. And then you pick up with Joshua, Judges, and so forth. So then we're going through actually this period of the kings. Saul was the first king. David would be the greatest king. Okay, so First and Second Samuel kind of covers that period. David's life, Saul's life. Second Samuel comprises really the entire life of David, or kingship of David, which is about 40 years. So then First and Second Kings picks up from David's life as it ends, and then he's going to transfer the kingdom over to Solomon. And then you go into the period of, again, so this period of the kings, First and Second Kings, is from the end of David's life, transferring over to Solomon, to the Babylonian exile. The Babylonian exile is a very important time in the history of not only Israel, but human history, because you have a shift from tribal sort of government to world government. Nebuchadnezzar would be the first world dominating kingdom. And then after Nebuchadnezzar, the kingdom of the Medes and Persian, then the Grecian kingdom, then the Roman Empire. And these are all world dominating kingdoms. Okay. The second section of the Old Testament is what's called the books of literature. So Job, Proverbs, Psalms. I just mixed up the order there. It's actually Job, Psalms, Proverbs, and then there's the Ecclesiastics, then Songs of Solomon. Those are what's called the books of literature. And then after that, it's the writings of the prophets. And the writing of the prophets is divided into two sections, what's called the minor prophets and the major prophets. Now, this arrangement was not necessarily inspired, meaning whether you have these books like this or not, because some throughout history, not everyone had what we call the collection of the Bible as it is arranged today. And so one of the things about the collection of the Bible, the books of the Bible, the titles, and some of the historical data, in and of itself is not inspired. The writings are. The revelation is. And that's what we have with the Bible. It is God's revelation. Okay? So with that, you have the minor prophets in the and I think we're going to study it when we get to that section. We're going to study it in terms of the dating. So you have Isaiah, and then you have all of the minor prophets except for the last three. Okay, the last three: Haggai, Zephaniah, and Malachi. Okay, they were actually post-Babylonian books, but the other minor prophets fit around the time of Isaiah, and to me they should have been grouped that way. And the reason why I think, and the reason why I'm going to study it that way, is that you're going to get the same prophetic voice, the same timing of the prophetic voice. Okay. So Kings, and again, if you have a study Bible, you can Google, you can do a lot of things. If you know, I don't get into the debates, okay, on dates, authorship, whether or not, you'll find pretty much almost every, I think, study Bible has the question of when they debated as to who wrote what book, and debating the authorship, the titles, okay. Now, in the case of First and Second Kings, just as some of the other Old Testament writings, we don't know the author. And we're not even clear on the timing of the writing. Now, some people believe that Ezra, the book of Ezra, as you see, the book of Ezra, the scribe wrote a lot of the Old Testament books. We just don't have any proof on that. And of course, the frequent phrase or referring to, his tomb is with us until this day. Well, what day was it? Again, not clear. So what is beneficial, of course, for us is the continual narrative. Now, First Kings. Now, the difference between First Kings, too, because you have two different writings. You have First and Second Kings, and then you have First and Second Chronicles. And when we get to Chronicles, you will see that one of the focus of Chronicles will be from the kingdom of Judah, or the kings there. And there's a reason for that, because it's going to be a heavy emphasis on the bloodline of Jesus. As we go through now, First and Second Kings is going to be, you see, a heavy focus on the kings of Israel. But then, as in both cases, you see, kind of as the narrative goes, switching back and forth between the kings of the north or the kings of Judah. Now, we will see that in just a few chapters. Okay, in just a few chapters from here, Solomon's son will divide the nation. So right now the nation is one nation. David ruled over all of Israel. Solomon will rule over all of Israel. But then Solomon's son will be a fool and divide the nation. And that's what is known then as the kings of Israel and then the kings of Judah, or the northern or southern kingdom. The southern kingdom is Judah, and the northern kingdom is Israel. It's referred to all of the regions. The 10 tribes are considered Israel. All right. So Kings focuses mostly on this, the northern kingdom rule, but it will also kind of jump back and forth, telling different perspectives of both Judah's kings as well as Israel kings. Now, also doing First and Second Kings, we'll see more political perspective. It's going to be the ruthlessness of politics. It'll be quite brutal. And then, of course, we will also see the judgment of God as it come to Israel. Okay, so let me bring this up here. Let's start First King chapter 1 says, "Now King David was old and getting on in years, and although they covered him with bedclothes, he could not get warm. So his servants said to him, 'Let us search for a young virgin for my lord the king. She is to attend to the king and to be his caregiver. She is to lie by your side so that my lord the king will get warm.'" Now, let me also say this, that I am using the Holman Christian Standard Bible. That's my translation, the one I love. And I just like this translation. I think it's one of the best translations. But we can get into that another time. We can get into that another time. Getting what I am looking at. All right. So we can get into that another time. All right. So, but that's my translation. That's why if you're using it, they like the Old King James, New King James, or any other translation, you will see that the wording is different. The message is still the same. All right. So when he says King David was old, David is around 70. Now, when we talk about language, too, of the Bible, we're talking about the language. sometimes the language, you kind of have to understand how we speak, right? So, for example, when my mother said, if you don't stop, I'm going to knock you into tomorrow. What did she mean? Or if you were horsing around in the back and your father said, don't make me pull this car over, right? Well, what does he mean by that? Now, you could record the words and you could say, Dad said, do not make me pull this car over. And then 100 years from now, when someone is reading this, then they can say, well, what does he mean? Well, it's a euphemism. Now, we know clearly what Dad means. We know that Dad is not literally saying that he is going to pull the car over, that the children are making him pull the car over. We actually know this is a threat. It's a threat of discipline, right? Now, I'm saying this because in the telling of the story, sometimes, especially with the way the narrative of the Old Testament, the detail, this is not a step by step in order, right? A step by step, but it's necessarily telling the narrative. So when he says David is getting old, the question is, how old is David at this time? Well, at the very least, we know he's around 70 years old. Okay, we know he's around 70. He could be a little older. Because 70, like here, when you look at this age here, and then of course we're going to see an overlapping, right? An overlapping of the kingdoms, and David's getting ready to transfer the kingdom over. But when it says right here, so he said David was getting older in years. So again, I'm not clear in terms of how old he is. I'm not clear of his age. As far as, is he 70 around this time? We know that he was 30 years old when he started reigning. And the Bible says that he reigned 7 years in Judah, and then, 7 years in Judah, and about 33 years over the entire nation of Israel. Okay, so his reign is about 40 years. Okay, so all right, so now he's getting old, and what is kind of funny about this is when you see this age here, that everybody knows that everybody's like, okay, the old man is old and he's going to pass on. Now you're going to see later on why I'm saying this. Why this isn't kind of important to the narrative here. When he says right here, now the king was old and getting on in years. He says, and although they covered him with bedclothes, he could not get warm. So his servant said to him, let us search for a young virgin for my lord the king. So she continued the king to be his caregiver. Okay, so she's going to be a virgin and an exceptionally beautiful woman. Now this is going to come into play later on. Okay, this is going to come into play later on. All right. Verse 3, they searched for a beautiful girl throughout the territory of Israel, and they found Abishag, the Shunammite, and brought her to the king. The girl was of unsurpassed beauty, and she became the king's caregiver. She served him, but he was not intimate with her. And sometimes when you get older, sometimes that certainly the idea was that she would lay with him. Actually, she would kind of warm him up, again, indicative of his age. And notice he said he was not intimate with her. Now again, this is going to come into play. Okay, this is going to come into play just as later on. Okay, so but keep that in mind. I think I'm out of time, guys. So yes, I will pick this up here in the next study because I am out of time. So I will pick this up in the next study. Okay, guys, see you then. See you in the next study.